Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Reduce and permanently fix your DSO at 15 days without taking on headcount. My name is Mark Price and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Our panelist for today is Corcentric's Sales Director for Northern Europe, Sophie Pope. Welcome, Sophie.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. And yes, as Mark mentioned, my name is Sophie Pope, and I'm the Sales Director here at Corcentric. So today's webinar is entitled Reduce and Permanently Fix Your DSO at 15 days without adding headcount. So, of course, current volatility and market conditions have meant that companies really need to focus more than ever on optimizing their cash flow. And you know, it's critical in order to meet their strategic goals. The job market is also crazy and a tough place to be at the moment for an employer looking for, you know, both finance and digital skills. My webinar today and my job during that webinar is really to illustrate a practical idea on how you can reduce and fix your DSO in as low as 15 days and give you predictable cash flow really without the need to take on any more head count, and also focus those you have on your financial strategic goals. So let's kick on to the next slide. Let me first introduce my company, Corcentric. So we were started in the US in the mid-90s, originally founded as a GPO, group purchasing organization. And actually we focused on automotive companies. But what was unique about what Corcentric did at that time was that it was a service underpinned with technology. So the aim was to help companies reduce the cost of doing business so they could invest in sustainable growth. Now that aim and that focus on tech actually remains part of our DNA today. So we're able to provide a global solution supported by 550 and growing employees from 15 offices worldwide. The UK office is actually based in London and has responsibility for the northern part of Europe. So that's where I'm based. I actually live a little east, and obviously, like many, working from home in Kent. So we actually connect 2.25 million businesses on behalf of our 2,500 customers. Those customers trust us with 20 million transactions a year, totaling just north of $105 billion in annual transaction value. So who are our customers? Well, our customers cover a wide range of industry sectors, as you can see here. There is no particular vertical or market where we are more prevalent. But I think that's really because of the universal nature of functions and challenges within finance. Having said that, we do deal with a lot of different and varied organizations, and it means that we are pretty experienced in accommodating any specific nuances that your business might have. So of course there's some famous big brand logos there that you might recognize, but we actually work with lots of different types and sizes of businesses structured in a number of different ways. So for example, ITV is UK only, whereas Unisys, you can see, is global. VF, we know as the company behind brands such as North Face and Timberland, they actually operate a shared service centre, consolidating all the functions for business units throughout Europe. So we are used to working with systems from legacy, homegrown, to ERP, massive SAP, S4HANA, consolidated or disparate systems, and really simple or complex organizational structures. So what do we actually do? Well, Corcentric has a broad range of solutions that essentially help companies purchase, pay, and get paid. There are three main components to our offering, the first of which is our technology platform. So there are three pillars to technology. Let's start with source to pay, and we cover everything from spend analysis, strategic sourcing, supplier management, contracts, P2P, transactional procurement, invoice management, and finance modules. There's quite a lot there. And that all is designed to help improve efficiencies and drive down costs on the AP side or on the buy side. We also cover order to cash, and that would relate to e-invoice presentment and collections. And centrally, we have a payments platform which pulls the two sides of the coin together. So the second component to our offering that I mentioned is actually advisory. So we have specialist business analysts that actually look at your financial data, whether that's your spend data on the AP side or your customer ledger on the order to cash side. We look into the data and we see opportunities for where we may help with tech, people, or funding, which is where our third component comes into play. So finally, as I say, we provide finance. Now that's funding to help with working capital management. That could be to extend days payable outstanding on the AP side, or as we're going to look at in more detail today, reducing the day sales outstanding to a fixed and therefore certain cash level. So both of those activities are really focused on one thing, and that's finding the money locked in your cash conversion cycle, bringing it to the bottom line, and so helping unlock that working capital. So Corcentric is essentially a blend of technology, people, finance that delivers a unique and unfair advantage to our clients. So what am I talking about today? We'll managed AR, managed accounts receivable. Let's have a look at the solution in more details, and let me start by answering, what is it? Well, initially, there are two sides to what we provide, and that's an outsourced business process where we do the heavy lifting or tactical work involved in running your AR function. And the second is funding. And with the funding, this is how we guarantee your business outcome. So on the outsourcing side, we see ourselves as an augmentation of your team. Our team is typically used to augment rather than replace, meaning that, you don't necessarily have to add headcount as you grow. And it also helps to, resource or refocus your existing AR in a way that supports strategic growth. So you can support growth without the need for adding headcount. Invoice distribution, we provide a full EIPP solution, handling the distribution of invoice via whatever means necessary. So including, integration with customer AP portals. Obviously, that's quite a lot of heavy lifting these days. And we also provide business model as a service. So there is no capital outlay, no investment in technology, infrastructure, or systems required. And it also means that we take responsibility for continually keeping up with market trends and understanding how to develop that technology in line with your requirements. So you don't have to invest in that. We do that for you. On the other side, of course, we have funding. Now, we actually offer a full ledger solution. So every invoice will be paid by Corcentric. It's not an invoice or customer specific solution, and we will fund 100% of the ledger if you so choose. Of course, that can be applied to sub-ledgers based on product, territory, or other segmentation such as value. And this is actually how often clients start with us, with this segmented proof of concept on a smaller sub-ledger. So with the funding element, it also means that we eliminate risk. So The service de-risks the collection process for you because we provide a non-recourse service. So we take on the full ledger, good, bad, indifferent. That means no more late payments, no more bad debt and write-offs. We also have a simplified payment process, which means obviously that your cash application becomes pretty streamlined. So we will be able to provide a single consolidated payment and remittance advice, and obviously that can be ingested into your internal ERP or systems as necessary. So we will provide, that payment detail in one consolidated form, so it's easier for you to make that cash application. So essentially what we're talking about is a unique mix of a BPO and funding, and it's the finance that underwrites the results and basically allows us to guarantee the business outcomes. So I'm sure you guys are process people. Many of our clients are. So I wanted to give you a very brief overview of how this actually works. Okay, so we're going to look at an example workflow, which starts off with you, the customer. And in fact, in this representation, you are the supplier because you're specifically we're looking at your customer ledger. So let's have a look at your ERP system. That generates a data file that we will take in its existing native format, whether that's XML, CSV, whatever, and that is sent to the EIPP portal, which is built and maintained by us, but branded as your own website, included and all included in the service. So we hand off that data file to an internal system of ours that performs some validation against the established business rules. So PO numbers, credit limits, whatever the agreed parameters are, which we'll walk you through during setup. If there are any validation issues that we can't resolve, things that come outside of those established rules, we will seek to discuss with you and agree an outcome. So this is actually rare, of course, and through a series of iterations, we learn how to resolve, without disclosure in the future. So, for example, what do I do in the instance of an invoice exceeding credit limits, etc. So thereafter, EIPP portal will create the invoice. It does this by combining the dynamic data with your ERP, some pre-built templates. And these are built by us, but can be identical to your existing invoice. Obviously, the remittance details will change. But if you don't like your existing invoice format, we can also improve it when we build the internal template. So you have the option to develop that further if you wish. The EIPP portal then provides proof review and approval functionality for you to ensure quality control, and we send the invoice to the buyer. So we're able to do that via multiple channels, including obviously email, EDI, post, fax, e-invoice. After that invoice is sent, we will settle it with you on the agreed date in that consolidated format. And then we'll provide that consolidated remit file for everything paid, so that you can ingest that into your system, back into your ERP, etc. Once your customer has the invoice, there are several things that can happen. First of all, obviously, the one we all hope for is that they would pay it. And in certain circumstances, we can set up payment tools inside EIPP portal so they can pay online, or they can pay offline using your standard methods. They could also dispute that invoice. Now, this would be raised and handled by our team. And, like I've mentioned, we would handle the majority of cases, but, occasionally, we may need to discuss anything outside of the rules or beyond our knowledge, e.g., I never got my goods, etc. So if neither of these things happen, we'll make the collections call. Again, we're going to use the EIPP portal in this process to send a copy of the documents, make sure we verify that they were delivered and how it was originally sent. We'll have full audit trails and delivery info in the portal, so that helps empower the collections call and challenge the kind of "I didn't get it" excuse for non-payment. And finally, when the invoice we send over to the customer also contains onboarding information, which is done online, so we can move them to a more electronic, streamlined process going forward. Well, what is the benefit of all of this? Well, there are actually, sorry, I was behind with my clicking. So there's the process in completion. So why would we do this? Well, obviously there's got to be some benefit to you guys. So let's have a look at what those measurable benefits are. We do have those that are additional value that we haven't necessarily got a standard way for calculating the number attached to. But let's start with those that are quantifiable and measurable, so that we can calculate a cash figure or assign a value to the benefit. There are 8 benefits we can measure. We're going to start with the first, which is working capital. So higher DSO means more capital is stuck in your conversion cycle. Lowering that puts cash on the balance sheet, and we can calculate exactly what that is by the number of days reduced, and obviously your float. The next thing we can calculate is the comparative cost of borrowing those funds. So that's basically using your WACC as an established metric. Could be in industry standard, or could be your own. And thirdly, there's the cost of ensuring receivable. So I've done that one. Receivable using credit guarantee to protect against non-paying clients. Again, there are established industry-wide rates we can just drop into that calculation. The last measurable benefit on this slide is going to be the bad debt. So there is a cost to customer defaults, debt recovery action, and we can calculate that based on your historical write-offs and our industry knowledge. The next lot of calculated metrics are payments processing. So of course, we look at your customer payments, and we are able to establish the value that you've based on industry average costs to accept and process a payment. Obviously, there's a cost associated with actually making the payments. The cost of full-time staff. Now, this might be collection staff. This could be accounts receivable specifically. What would you do with that FTE resource if you could refocus it elsewhere? So we can calculate, obviously, the cost to the organisation of freeing up that resource. And then invoice distribution. Obviously, there's a cost associated with your current way of distributing invoices, and this is something that we would then take on board. So there wouldn't be the IT cost, there won't be postage costs, etc., and we can work out what that is per invoice. And then, of course, the revenue growth. So this best-in-class order-to-cash process really supports new customer acquisition, retention, and increased sales. So we can assess our impact based on industry average revenue and impact for your EBITDA. So those are the measurable benefits. Here we look at a business case to understand the kind of numbers that we would be able to generate if we look at a typical ledger of 100 million. This is a real customer example, and we do have permission of the customer to use these use these numbers. Obviously, we're not giving away any names, but obviously 100 million is a nice value for you to work out what your ledger would be and what some of these numbers would relate to. Now, when we look at these numbers, you won't necessarily have the same numbers. You may not use credit guarantee, for example. You might have a larger team, so the FTE value might be larger. So what we tend to do is we will look at your specific data rather than past cases. When people look at that business case, they tend to ask us one of two questions. It's, how much does all this cost? and how do we go about getting numbers for our organization? So you can have a look here that, the calculations are that are clearly identified here, but we would really go through a process of looking at your data, understanding your nuances of your business as per these metrics, and we would really then go through that data with you, full transparency, and generate our cost into this mix, so you can see, what your payback time would be, where your profits would be, or net gains would be thereafter. So we would go through this process with our business analyst, and we would show you our assumptions, obviously check, sense check that our understanding of your business is right. So the goal of this exercise is really for you to have full ROI and understanding of the business case before we invested any more time in looking into this. And more often than not, the business case is actually a very compelling one. So there are additional value levers that we can offer. Now, some customers that we speak to value one or more or few of these higher than others. Sometimes we are able to put numbers to them, but as a standard first step business case, these are seen as additional rather than key drivers in the business case calculations. So obviously it's quite difficult to standardize these kind of values based on industry metrics, but what is the cost of releasing your IT team to not focus on e-invoicing, or what is the cost of your analytics team, or you may not have an analytics team. What is the value of you having increased visibility to be able to scale quicker? These are things that have a real value, but they're not necessarily quantifiable in a straightforward way. So we can work through this list with you as well and understand which of these really may be driving your decision. So finally, I'm going to finish with this slide. So I want to just take a moment to kind of summarize. I've gone through a lot of information. There's a lot of numbers being flown around. Take a minute to summarize and crystallize the benefits that we can offer. So first of all, we're looking at an immediate DSO reduction. So you join with us, and it could be your first consolidated payment as of Q4 this year, in fact. Every invoice is paid by us. That's 100% of the ledger, unless we go for a subledger. But we can pay you to a fixed DSO, 2 terms, or actually even faster. This service totally de-risks the collection process for you, because we provide that non-recourse agreement. It's contractually binding. We take on the full ledger, good, bad, and indifferent. And it really means no more late payments, no more bad debts, no more write-offs, and you get a predictable cash flow or predictable cash payment each month. Our team is used to augment your existing team, and we allow for your existing resource to be redeployed or focused in a way that will be more useful to the strategic goals of your department or business. And you can support without the need for recruitment, which is a significant issue at the moment. So because we are paying our client, the cash application process becomes streamlined to a single consolidated payment and remittance. And we will provide that payment in an agreed system-friendly format to support automatic ingestion. But we also provide that full EIPP solution, so it's e-invoice delivery. We create, store and send the invoices. We provide, and it's secure, reliable, and traceable via different channeling, of course, and that includes the customer web portal, which would be branded to your organizational branding. We then, last but not least, we operate on a business model as a service. So it means there's no funding up front, no massive capital outlay, investment in technology. I've worked in technology for a long time, and I think technology is obviously amazing, but there's just no guarantees of getting that result. So it does mean, that we continually develop and evolve the tech with the market, as it's our business to make sure that we continually meet and exceed market expectations with our tech. So that's what we do. And that's it really. So I guess at this stage, when you're looking at putting something between the supplier and the buyer, usually that's people, process, and technology, but it's the funding that guarantees those business outcomes. So just as a kind of sign off, and thank you so much for listening today. We would love to hear from you. Obviously this is the end of the webinar, but potentially the start of a conversation. So what would you do with additional funding and resource in Q4? And thank you very much, and please contact us. My email address is at the bottom there, and speak to you soon. Have a good day.
Great, thanks, Sophie. And at this point, I'd like to open up the presentation to address some of the questions submitted during the webinar.
Oh yes, of course, I forgot about questions.
Yeah, we just got time to run through. I've got a couple of questions here. So one that is quite a common question on these webinars is, how is this different to invoice factoring?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I do get asked that a lot actually. So the difference with us is we are full ledger, as I've mentioned. So we take the good, the bad, and the indifferent, and we give you an aggregated risk profile based on the whole ledger. So we don't cherry pick particular customers. We don't take the best of the lot and leave you with the rest. This is a full ledger solution that is designed to alleviate some of that tactical work from the AR in completion. So the other thing we have is that non-recourse agreement that means that actually we take on the risk, but we do it with a slightly different outlook to your sort of standard factoring company. I think the dangers with factoring is that you relinquish control of what happens to your invoices, and therefore there's a risk to your customer relations. Factoring companies will often collect by any means necessary. That's not our MO. We are extremely sensitive to the fact that your customers are still customers. Even in collection, it's really important to treat them with a similar cultural adaptation of the way that you deal with your customers, and their growth. Your growth is our growth, so it's really important for us to have that kind of white-gloved approach when it comes to dealing with your customers. So we're all about maintaining those relationships and growing them for you and for us.
Great, thanks, Sophie. And one other question here is, I have a particularly challenging subledger. Would you be able to tackle that, or are there exclusions or limitations?
Yes, well, obviously it depends what what the problems are. But yeah, if it was easy, you probably wouldn't want us to get involved. If you're not having issues somewhere, if it's not a headache, then it wouldn't be a problem you're looking to get some support with. So the probably the easiest way to answer this is we would always like to have a look at the data, and from that point we're going to give you some insights. Sometimes we get customers that don't realize the exact levers that are causing them problems. They have a feeling, but when you can see it in the data in graphical format, it's quite eye-opening sometimes to really kind of pinpoint the facts. We like to look at the data, and we will investigate that with you, and always interested in putting together the business case. And this is, it's really just as much for us as it is for you to understand, what would this cost, and what is really going to be delivered in terms of value. What I would say is that when we do have a slightly different approach, in the fact that we will focus on continuous improvement. So instead of kind of a lift and shift of your business process to us, we won't it's in our interest to effectively manage that process as well as we can. And sometimes that means that iterative approach of, okay, well, did you know that you have I don't know, 70% throughput payment, but if you maybe increased your tolerance in this particular area, or maybe you tackled a specific customer problem, you might be able to increase that throughput to 80% touch free, depending on what data you're presented with. It's often it's important to have that intelligent overview to and someone who has time to go into it and to tweak the process as we go, or make improvements as we go. So it's yeah, definitely we'll have a look at tough ones. I like a challenge, and we would love to see your data and to put some numbers together to see what we can do for you.
Great, thanks, Sophie. So thanks again to Sophie and everyone for attending today. If we're unable to answer anyone's questions during the Q&A, we will reach out to you individually with a response. And everyone will receive a recording and presentation from today's webinar at some point soon. So have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.